Yeah, this whole quarantine situation really does suck. However, just before the quarantine took effect here, I managed to get one of these, which is a Nikon F100 35mm SLR. And I bought this to actually replace my Canon A1, which I've sold. Buying a camera like this just before a lockdown does seem like a stupid idea. And it is. I actually haven't had that much opportunity to use it. I haven't been able to really go anywhere. I have brought it with me on my exercise walks, and I've managed to run a couple of rolls through it. Now, two of them were black and white, which I was able to develop myself, but one of them is C41, and unfortunately the labs are closed, so yeah, this image I just can't, they're locked in here until I can get this developed. I should probably buy some C41 chemistry because I have the tools to do colour film, I just don't have the chemicals. So this is the F100 that I ordered from Japan, and as you can see it is pretty much immaculate. There's absolutely no marks, no scratches. It's nigh on perfect altogether. It doesn't have the sticky grip or the sticky back problem. Some of these older Nikon cameras with this sort of leather covering had a tacky surface applied, I believe, and it breaks down over time and makes everything kind of sticky. This hasn't got that problem at all, so that's really nice, although it can be fixed apparently with some rubbing alcohol. The other issue that you need to look out for if you're picking up an F100 is the back door. So if you're loading film, you use this little tab here on the side, you pop that open. These little plastic tabs here have a habit of breaking off, so if you're one of those people who like loads film and then slams the door down, don't do that on this camera. What I like to do is I actually put my thumb here, so I catch the film cartridge holder and then I just put it down nice and careful. Back doors are very hard to find. You can sometimes find data backs that can be used, but be careful with that because F100s break the back doors. When you're breaking one of them, you're sort of screwed. So to turn on the camera, we just flick the switch to the on position. There's no locks or anything on this particular switch. If you want to light up the information LCD here, you can actually just flick it again and that puts it into a light up mode. This camera goes into standby, so if you want to wake it up from standby you can just flick it again. So here's our information readout. We are currently in aperture priority mode. If you want to change that, we just press the mode button and then use the back command dial and we can switch between them. So now we're in shutter, program and manual. This here's our exposure compensation. So we just do that and then we can scroll up and down our exposure comp. It goes to plus and -5. On the side of the viewfinder we've got our metering modes. This is currently in color matrix metering, but if we press in the lock button and turn it, you can put it into a spot metering mode or a center weighted metering mode. I normally just leave it in 3D matrix because it works really well and it's the best mode, I think. Spot metering can be used for shooting somebody in heavy shadow or in weird lighting conditions, but generally I just leave it on 3D color matrix as default. On the left of the camera, we've got our flash settings selector. We've got our ISO selector. So this camera has DX coding. When you put in a can of film, it'll automatically determine the ISO. But if you want to fiddle around with it or push and pull, you can just go up here, press the ISO button, and then you can change your ISO using the command dial on the back here. Up here we've got our bracket selector switch. So this allows us to do bracketed shooting. So we just press that down, and we can choose to turn on and off the bracketing mode. And the front dial then will change the level of like plus and minus, or whether we're doing frames. I haven't used the bracketing mode in this, so I'm not exactly familiar with it. On the left of the camera here, we've got our shooting modes. So you can pick things like multi-exposure mode, and then we can go to single shot, continuous shot, continuous silent or slow. It shoots at slightly slower FPS. On the back of the camera, we've got our AF on button. And I actually use this. This is the back button focus. I prefer using back button focus. So I've set up the camera using the custom settings. To change custom settings, you use the CSM button here on the left. And you look at the top of the camera, and you see here we've got a number. So this is our option is on the left, and then on the right is the actual setting. So 4.1, I don't even know what that means. Look it up on the chart online. To the left of it, we've got our AEL and AFL. So that will lock your exposure and focus. You can customize this, I believe, as well, but I have it set to lock both, so that when I press this down, my focus locks and my exposure locks, allowing me to focus and recompose really easily. Down here we've got our focus point selector. So if we have this here as our joystick for moving our focus point around, but you can also lock the joystick, and this just locks it to the center point, which is what I use. If you switch it over here, this will ask the camera to determine the closest focusing point, but I don't bother with that. I just leave it on center point, focus, lock it, and then recompose the shot if I need to. Lastly, you can change out these eyepieces here. And what's nice is that this eyepiece is the same one that Nikon's using on like the D850. They still use this, so you can get these little eyepieces and attachments to provide different reliefs for people with glasses. And then up here, finally, we've got our diopter. We just pull that out, and you can adjust your diopter setting. I have mine set there, and it works really well for me. On the front of the camera, we've got our autofocus settings. So currently it's in single. This is in manual focus, and that's in continuous focus. So we're going to leave it in single focus. So over here we've got our depth of field preview switch. So if you take the body cap off, you can actually see the little lever actuate when you press this down. And that's controlling the aperture lever in the lens. So the advantage of this particular camera is that it's sort of a Swiss Army knife of compatibility with various lenses. So if we take this lens, which is an AF lens, this is a mechanical AF lens, which means that there's no autofocus motor in the lens. The autofocus motor is in the camera, and it couples through this little screwdriver attachment. So this will actually spin and drive a little screw terminal in the lens itself. When you pop the lens on, and now the camera can drive the lens. It's also quite loud. So that's for mechanical screwdriver lenses. But not only is this camera compatible with those, it's also fully compatible with all shooting modes with the G lenses. So if we take this 50 1.8G, which is Nikon's current f-mount 50mm lens, we get full autofocus support on this lens as well. It'd be helpful if I turned on the switch on the side to be manual focus. And you can see that there's full autofocus support on this lens. Not only is this camera compatible with the G lenses and the AF lenses, it's also compatible fully with AI lenses. And how this works is there's a little feeler here which detects the aperture setting. Now on the AF lenses, this is actually in the aperture ring. You can see that there's a little lip here. On AI lenses will have this as well, allowing you to mount and fully control the lenses with all the shooting modes. However, on this camera, 3D color matrix metering doesn't work with AI lenses, which is a bit of a bummer. I believe the F4 and I think the F6 support that, and that's it. So you will be stuck with center weighted metering if you're using AI lenses. The lens compatibility does let this easily share lenses with my Z6 and Z7, so that's a nice bonus. I don't have to buy separate lenses for film and digital. I can just share them easily using an adapter. Apart from the lens compatibility, another reason I really like this camera is the fact that it takes AA batteries. So you don't need to go around faffing around with CR2 or little watch batteries. It just takes AA's. I'm using these rechargeable IKEA batteries, which have served me very well. And yeah, you can just throw a couple of these in your bag, or in an emergency you can pick them up in any shop. As for pricing, I picked this up from Japan on eBay for around 250 quid, which is a little steep, but it did come with this 70 to 210 lens, which isn't a half bad lens in its own right, with it. So I got an okay deal. I did get dinged for customs for like 50 quid, which was frustrating because that happens every so often. Would I recommend this camera to people getting into film photography? Yeah, sure. It has all the automatic modes you could want, and it takes care of a lot of the complexities of shooting film. Would I recommend to someone who's experienced? Yeah. Has all the manual control you could want when you turn it on, and it lets you do pretty much anything you want to it. So the Nikon F100, it's pretty damn good.